this morning, those of you who are seeking truth. We're on the 28th day of the month of September on the Roman pagan calendar that the world follows. And sad news this morning. The world, obviously not everybody in the world, but I am, and many are mourning the death of Shimon Peres. I believe that this is a significant event. I'm going to share with you a little bit in our teaching today. It's kind of changed what I thought that I would do when I woke up this morning about 2 o'clock and got the word that Shimon Peres had passed away. He is the last of the founding fathers of the modern day state of Israel. I want you to let that sink in just a little bit, because I think that this is significant in what our father's doing and where we are in history. He is the last of those who were part of the forming of the modern day state of Israel in 1947 and 48. Not exactly sure. I'm careful about trying to put dates together, and I see people with all kind of calculations going back and trying to pinpoint a day and year that the Messiah will come. I don't do that. I do believe, as I've said yesterday, I think that he will come in association with the feast days of trumpets, those three feasts that are to be fulfilled that we're just getting ready to go in and observe right now. They are significant. The Feast of Yom Teruah are trumpets, and then the Feast of Atonement and Tabernacles. And we are in those days. And we've been talking about our Father having a calendar. And I know that for many Christians, that seems very strange to you because you've never heard about God having a calendar. But he does. Our Father has a calendar, and he has a timetable. And that timetable is governed by the movement of the heavens. That is God's watch. And it keeps better time than any Rolex or any other watch man can make. It is perfect. When we go back and look at in 2015 and 16, we had what I believe is a fulfillment of the Messiah telling us there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars concerning that last generation and his coming and establishing the kingdom. And those at B'nai Israel and many that have been studying are very familiar with the fact that in 2015 and again in 2016, we had the blood moons that appeared exactly to the day on the Feast of Passover in 2015, and then on the Feast of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. And then the exact same thing happened again in 2016. This year we had a blood moon on Passover, it's when we look at these blood moons, and I think I said 15, 16, maybe it's 2014 and 15, getting my dates mixed up here. But we've had these signs in the moon with these 4 blood moons that came to pass exactly on these high holy days. And here we are now. We're fixing to go into, as we know, the Feast of Yom Teruah, and also Rosh Hashanah on Israel's civil calendar. It's their new year, Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. And it will begin the year 5777 on Israel's timeline, or their keeping of calendar. Now, I think that's significant that we got 3 sevens coming up here. Those of you that go to the boats, you know when 3 sevens line up on the slot machine, you've hit the jackpot. At least I think that's right. I don't go to boats, but I think that some of those slots have you get 3 sevens lined up as a winner or something. Remember that from my days back in the Marine Corps. But there's so many things happening in the world right now that indicate that you and I are on the verge of something major happening in the world. I'm talking about something that hasn't happened to this extent since Yeshua was here 2,000 years ago. I really believe that we are there where something unbelievable is going to shake this world, and it's going to happen according to our Father's calendar. Those that attend B'nai Israel are familiar with the fact. In fact, I've encouraged them to Google and search uh, and to understand a prophecy by a Jewish rabbi who lived back in the 12th century, 12th and 13th century, actually. He was born in 1140, died February 22nd of 1217. Now, those of you that know history, you know that's during the period of the Crusades, when Rome was sending crusades to try to liberate Jerusalem from the pagan Gentile kingdoms that held it at that time. But this rabbi, his name was Judah ben Samuel. Now, I'm going to say that most of you have never heard of Rabbi Judah ben Samuel. But what I hope you're going to do after this study, I want you to write his name down. It's Judah, Ben, B-E-N, it's his son, and Samuel. I want you to Google him. You can just go to any search engine and Google Judah Benjamin Samuel, Judah ben Samuel, and you'll pull up a number of sites that will give you a lot of history about this man. It's well known, and his writings are well known. It's not a secret. But for our purposes today, what I want you to understand is that this man, and he was referred to as the pious. He was such a dedicated man to God that even bishops would come to this man for advice. And Rabbi Judah said that Elijah, the prophet, had appeared to him and given him a prophecy about the end of time and when the Messiah would return. Now, I know you say, well, yeah, somebody said Elijah appeared to him. I don't know. But let me tell you what Rabbi Ben Samuel prophesied, and then I'm going to show you the history of it, and I think that it will get your attention. Rabbi Judah ben Samuel said that Elijah appeared to him and told him, now this, understand, he died on February 22nd, 1217. He prophesied that there would be 10 jubilees until the coming of the Messiah, beginning in the 1500s, 1517. What he prophesied is that in 1517, the Ottoman Turks, which were not a power at that time, that the Ottoman Turks would conquer Israel and consequently Jerusalem, and that they would rule Jerusalem for the next 8 jubilees. Now, for those of you that have not studied, if you're Christians and are in a congregation or denomination where they've not encouraged you to study the law in the Old Testament, you probably don't know what the Jubilee year is. But every 7 years, the land was to lay fallow, and then every 7 sevens, or after 49 sabbatical years, was declared a Jubilee year. The 50th year was a Jubilee year, and all debts are canceled, and all property goes back to its original owner. And again, Christianity doesn't know much about that because we don't study it. You don't have to know a lot about that to follow what I'm going to share with you today, and I think get you excited and make you want to start getting your garments pressed and cleaned and ready. I'm talking about spiritually, to get ready to see the Messiah, because I really believe that we're on the verge of the Messiah splitting the heavens and returning to this earth to claim it from Satan and present it to his Father. Now, 50 years of Jubilee. Rabbi Judah ben Samuel said that the Ottoman Turks would rule Israel and Jerusalem for the next 8 Jubilees, beginning in 1517. Now, if Jubilee is 50 years, the next 8 Jubilees would be a total of 400 years, right? Not real complicated math. But he said they would rule Jerusalem for 8 Jubilees or 400 years. And then that after that, the next Jubilee, or the 9th Jubilee, or 9th period of 50 years, that Jerusalem would be a no man's land. And then at the end of the 10th Jubilee, the Messiah would appear and establish his kingdom. Now you say, "No, what am I going to worry about some guy? This guy lived in Regensburg, Regensburg, Germany, right in the 1100s, 1200s. I'm going to listen to what this guy said." Well, look at history. And I'm saying, I want you to Google this for yourself. I want you to go back and look at history because his writings are available. We know now from history that the Ottoman Turks captured and conquered Israel in 1517. Now, we also know, it's a matter of history, you can check this, that in December of 1917, General Edmund Allenby, the general leading the British forces, liberated Jerusalem from the Ottoman Turks. Some say it was actually on the Feast of Dedication that it was liberated. I'm not sure. I've seen some different dates. But in December, and part of that is because General Allenby is said to have halted his forces 20 miles outside Jerusalem. And the reports are, by some letters that were written, that he wrote to King George V. Now, this is in December 1917. His forces are within 20 miles of Jerusalem, and he halts them. And he sends a letter to King George V, and he says that he will not fire British guns on God's holy city. And reportedly, the response back from King George was simply, pray. History tells us, the reports are, that the next morning, the Turks abandoned the city of Jerusalem without a shot being fired, and General Edmund Allenby led his troops, and he got off, here's another thing, he got off his horse and walked through the gate into the city out of respect for the city. He wasn't going to ride his horse through the gate. Now, friends, this is history and things that most people are not even aware was going on, and that is the biblical significance of it. There's so much we can say about this that's exciting, but you know, Christ came to save the Gentile nations. Israel, the 10 tribes have been scattered among the Gentiles. A very exciting thing to look at is that the word British, and these are the people that are free in Israel now from this 400 years of Ottoman Turk rule, exactly as the rabbi had prophesied. And remember, this rabbi died 300 years before the first fulfillment of that prophecy came to be. So he was either pretty darn lucky or he knew something, because it happened exactly beginning when he said it would, and it lasted exactly 400 years, just as he said it would. Now, the word British, in Hebrew, the word Brit is covenant, and the word Ish in Hebrew is man. So the British people literally, if you're looking at it in Hebrew, it means covenant man. Is it possible that British and then ultimately the Americans that came out of Britain, that we are part of those 10 tribes of Israel, and that we're really descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel? I think there's some very strong evidence to that, but that's not where I'm going today with this teaching. I just want you to see that there are things happening that are exciting, and I believe that God's hand, he's had his hand in this, absolutely bring it to pass. Now, what did the rabbi say? He said that Jerusalem then, for the 9th Jubilee, which would be the next 50 years after the Ottoman Turks were defeated, that Jerusalem would be a no man's land. Well, we know that from 1917 and the administration of the British Mandate, there was a line drawn down the center of Jerusalem that you can still go, and they can show you today where it was. And the city was divided with Israel on one side and Transjordan on the other. And it remained that way until the Six-Day War of 1967. You remember that war? You should. I may be talking to some people that are much younger than I am. I was in the Marine Corps stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina in 1967 when that war broke out. I had just returned the year before from Vietnam. And President Lyndon Johnson put us on notice. We actually went to the airport with full transport packs, and the planes were running, and President Johnson was going to fly us into the Sinai to support Israel in that war if it looked like they were going to lose. And so we actually sat on the tarmac for 2 days waiting for that order to go. I was actually kind of excited. I didn't want to go back to Vietnam, but I was excited about going to Israel and fighting for the Jews because I'd known since I was a little boy that the Jews are God's chosen people. That's about all I knew, but I thought it meant it'd be cool to go over there and fight with the Jews and for the Jews. But as you know, they didn't need our help. They won that war in 6 days. Why did people? The greatest miracle of generals and people all over the world study their tactics because there's never been a battle like it. They conquered, totally defeated 3 of the largest armies, and there were other armies that were supporting them, but Egypt, Jordan, and Syria were totally conquered by Israel in that 6 days. People have asked for a long time, well, why was it 6-day war? Because God always works 6 days and rests on the 7th. That's why I've been telling you all along that we need to get back to observing the Father's Sabbath. It's pretty important to him. But look, 1917, the end of the 400-year rule of the Ottoman Turks. And the rabbi said that Jerusalem will be a no man's land until the next Jubilee. How many years is it from 1917 to 1967? Pretty simple math. 50 years, another Jubilee. And Israel was freed, Jerusalem was freed from the Jordanian control. And since that time, Israel has control of Jerusalem. Now, there's still a lot of argument and disagreeing about the Temple Mount, but Israel controls Jerusalem. Now, what the rabbi had said then, that the Jubilee beginning then, that was the end of the 9th Jubilee in 1967, he said then at the end of the 10th Jubilee, the Messiah would appear and establish his kingdom. Well, from 1967, if you want to count forward 50 years, that would take you when? 2017. Now, he didn't say that he has to be at the end. He said in that 10th Jubilee, the Messiah will come and establish his kingdom. So if he could come this year, he could come at any time between now and then, but he said in that 10th Jubilee, the Messiah would come and establish his kingdom. Do we see any signs that the world's in turmoil and that all these things could happen? That the Babylonian monetary system could collapse? We're seeing all kind of turmoil, financial, militarily, spiritual, any way you want to look, all over the world. The world is in chaos, and this is exactly what Messiah said would happen. So could we literally be living in the days? I'm not talking pie in the sky stuff like you've heard of, because most people, the way preachers have taught it, they don't really believe it. But can you consider the fact that you and I, could actually be alive and see the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, come, split the skies, and establish his Father's kingdom here upon this earth? Wow, these are exciting times. And I think that Shimon Peres passing away could be a sign of what our Father is doing. The last of the leaders that established the nation. Can a nation be born in a day? Yes, it was. 1948. And Shimon Peres is the last of the leaders that was there and a part of that. Could there be a connection like Moses? Moses led the children of Israel up to crossing into the Jordan and claiming the land. And I wonder, is it like all these leaders that David Ben-Gurion and all these others that were responsible for the rebirth of Israel and the bringing her up to the point of entering into that rest? Could that be why now we see Shimon Peres, the last of those leaders, not unlike Moses, that didn't live to see it, but brought him to the point? Friends, I'm telling you, there's some exciting things happening in the world today. Now, I want you to, in the few minutes I've got left here, I want you to look at something. In Psalms 102, now, again, most people don't do much reading in the Old Testament, but I want you to listen to this, because I believe that this ties into what I'm talking about Israel becoming a nation again in 1948, and this being the last Jubilee from 1967 to 2017. Get ready. Be watching for some tremendous things to happen. In Psalms 102, it says a prayer of the afflicted when he is overwhelmed and poureth out his complaint before the Lord. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and let my cry come unto thee. Now I'm reading Psalms 102, starting in verse 1. Hide not thy face from me in the day when I am in trouble. Incline thine ear unto me in the day when I call. Answer me speedily. For my days are consumed like smoke, and my bones are burned as a hearth. My heart is smitten and withered like grass, so that I forget to eat my bread. By reason of the voice of my groanings, my bones cleave to my skin. I am like a pelican of the wilderness. I'm like an owl of the desert. I watch and am as a sparrow alone on the housetop. Mine enemies reproach me all the day. They that are mad against me are sworn against me. For I have eaten ashes like bread, and mingled my drink with weeping, because of thine indignation and thy wrath. For thou hast lifted me up and cast me down. My days are like a shadow that declineth, and I am withered like grass. But thou, O Lord, shalt endure forever, and thy remembrance unto all generations. Thou shalt arise and have mercy upon Zion, for the time to favor her, yea, the set time is come. For thy servant shall take pleasure in her stones, and favor the dust thereof. So the heathen shall fear the name of Yahweh, and all the kings of the earth thy glory. When the Lord shall build up Zion, he shall appear in his glory. He will regard the prayer of the destitute, and not despise their prayer. This shall be written for the generation to come, and the people which shall be created shall praise the Lord. He hath looked down from the height of his sanctuary. From heaven did Yahweh behold the earth, to hear the groaning of the prisoner, to loose those that are appointed to death, to declare the name of Yahweh in Zion, and his praise in Jerusalem. When the people are gathered together in the kingdoms to serve Yahweh, he weakened my strength in the way. He shortened my days. I said, O my God, take me not away in their midst of my days, or in the midst of my days. Thy years are throughout all generations. Of old hast thou laid the foundation of the earth and the heavens and the work of thy hands. They shall perish, but thou shalt endure. Yea, them shall wax old like a garment, as a vesture. Shalt thou change them, and they shall be changed. But thou art the same, and thy years shall have no end. The children of thy servants shall continue, and their seed shall be established before thee. Did you? Israel has been established before God. And if you know anything about the Holocaust, and you read Psalms 102, this describes what Israel went through as Satan tried to destroy them and keep this nation from becoming the nation that it is. Because if Satan could have destroyed Israel, he would have frustrated God's plan and made God a liar. So understand, the Balfour Declaration was signed back in 1917 when Britain freed Israel after those 8 Jubilees, freed Israel from the Ottoman Turks, and the promise was made that Israel could become a nation again. But there wasn't a lot of movement to do that. Now, there were some people working behind the scenes, but as a whole, the Jewish people, they didn't want to go back to that land of swamps and mosquitoes, and it was a desolate place. And business was the good in Germany and Poland and all of those places. I mean, they were watchmakers and they were tailors and they were doing real well, making a lot of money. But the Holocaust came, Hitler. And Hitler is one of the hunters that I believe Jeremiah prophesied that God would send to drive Israel from where they were scattered among the Gentiles, to drive them back to Israel to establish that land. If there had not been a Holocaust, I don't believe that there would be an Israel today. But the Holocaust, and you to see what they say, my bones are burned as in a hearth. The smoke of my torment ascendeth unto heaven. This is a description in my mind of the ovens at the death camps throughout Europe. And it's a result of that these people knew they had to have a homeland. In 1945, the Allies liberated the concentration camps. And what happened? 3 years later, 3 is the number of resurrection. 3 years later, Israel became a nation born in a day. Listen, I am telling you, we have witnessed, and the signs have been all around us, that the Messiah, I believe, has already stood up from the throne beside his Father and is ready to come and to claim this world, to destroy the ungodly systems and establish his Father's reign of righteousness here. As we're reading this Psalms 102, there's some things that you should be aware of, because we know that Israel has taken pleasure in the dust and the stones thereof. We've seen the archaeology. We've seen what they've done as they've gone over there and made that land since 1948 literally a garden paradise. It's exactly as the prophecies said they would do. But in verse 18, the psalmist says, after he talked about the set time, the set time has come. There's that God had a set time for these things to take place. It's on his day planner. Oh, this is so good if you can get into this. In verse 18 he says, this shall be written for the generation to come, and the people which shall be created shall praise Yahweh. Well, the people that was created is the nation of Israel. They became a state. They became a people again with a homeland. But the word generation, it's interesting. If you look at that word generation, or the generation is a door, which is a revolution, is what it actually means. Properly, a revolution of time. And then it says the generation to come. Now, the word to come there is a Hebrew word that literally means the last generation. Wow. Do you hear that? It literally means, and you look it up in Strong's, don't take my word for it. It means the last generation, or the hinder generation. And this is what Messiah said. It all ties together with what Messiah said in Matthew 24 concerning the budding of the fig tree. The generation that sees the budding of the fig tree, which is Israel becoming a nation again, in my opinion. The generation that sees the budding of the fig tree will not end until all is fulfilled. Friends, we are living in the most exciting times to be alive and serving our Father and proclaiming the truth of our Father's Word, to be coming out of the traditions of men and coming back in to keeping his commandments, keeping his holy days, observing his convocations. There has never been a more exciting time for you and I to be living and teaching and obeying our Father's commandments. This truly is significant, and I think that Shimon Peres passing today is one of those things that people that do not understand Bible prophecy and our Father's calendar and his timetable will let pass without understanding that this has enormous implications for the things to come. How I hope you'll get excited about the Word of God. I know that the church has made it such a mess that most people have just walked away from it. There are people that don't want anything to do with the religion because denominations have made it so confusing, and it's all been about money and greed and this sort of thing. Control of people rather than sharing the truth of our Father's Word. But friends, I want you to know we are living in monumentous times. And I don't know what the next steps are, but I think that the world is fixing to see some tremendous judgments as the Messiah gets ready to come and reclaim this place for his Father. Such exciting times. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to lead your church to be a part of it. I'm out of time. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, Shalom Aleichem.